Hello again, family and friends. There was a sick feeling in my stomach as I stood in the long customs line at the old Saigon Ton Son Airport. It was 1984 and I was back in Vietnam under the communist regime for the first time. The customs officers were thoroughly searching everyone's suitcases and carry-on bags. In my bags were numerous Vietnamese scriptures, and the words from our briefing echoed in my head. Whatever happens, don't let them see the tribal literature that you have. They considered the tribal people to be connected with CIA. Lord, I prayed, this looks like an impossible situation. In the tension of the moment, I forgot that God specializes in impossible situations. My mind relived the easy and friendly entries I had made in this same airport during the Vietnam War, as I supervised Vietnamese program origination for the Far East Broadcast Company in Manila, Philippines. The customs personnel now looked very grim, and you could see tension etched in the faces of all those waiting in those lengthy lines. The customs officers were thoroughly searching everybody's bags. During the long wait, my mind also recalled the report of the last group of Christian couriers who had come to Vietnam from Australia. They found themselves in a lineup behind a fashionable lady from France who wore a large floppy hat and carried a cage with a cat in it. When she was examined, she had no authorization papers for the cat. This delayed her processing considerably, and our colleagues behind her were literally the last ones left in the customs hall. They were very concerned about their large and heavy bags loaded with Vietnamese Bibles. When they finally came to the customs desk, the officer said, "We're so sorry this lady and her cat kept you waiting. Please take your bags and go right through." I looked around the room, desperately searching for a lady with a floppy hat and a cat, but none was in sight. Finally, it was my turn. I nervously handed my passport and customs paper to the lady officer. Like the others ahead of me, she asked me to count my money out in front of her, and just as I was nearly finished counting, she stopped me abruptly with the clear English words, "Sir, you did not declare your rings." I was very surprised. I've never had to declare my rings anywhere, I countered. "You must declare your rings here. How much are they worth?" I said, "I don't know. My wife gave me this one on my left hand 20 years ago when I married her, and this one on my right hand she gave me 17 years ago when I promised I'd stop going to school." With a sardonic smile, she muttered, "You must write down a value." So I took the forms and I wrote down 2 rings, $200 US. I then started to open my carry-on bag, which I had seen everybody ahead of me do. But she quickly stamped my forms, handed them to me, and waved me through. "Thank you, Lord, for answering my prayer," I whispered. "And thank you, Diane, for these rings." It turned out I didn't need a lady in a floppy hat with a cat. God had again accomplished the impossible, as he did for each of my 5 traveling companions. Our Bibles were for the fast-growing church in Vietnam. On Sunday that we were there, we worshiped with believers in a sanctuary of the Evangelical Church of Vietnam. That was one of 2 churches in the world that I have visited where an unusual announcement was made. Do not come to church next Sunday if you're here today, so that other people can get in and share in the service. The other church where I heard that same announcement was Pastor Lam's house church in Guangzhou, China. The exhortation that morning was, "Be ready to lay down your life for the Lord." While talking with Pastor Mieng after the service, I asked him, What message do you have for Christians in the free world about your situation? And he replied, Romans 8:36. That's a verse that says, For your sake we face death all day long. We are considered as sheep to be slaughtered. But we can't take these verses out of context. The pastor could have responded, Psalm 44:22, the Old Testament verse that's quoted by the Apostle Paul here in Romans 8:36. The preceding verse in Romans 8 begins, Who shall separate us from the love of Christ? And the obvious answer is understood to be Satan, the accuser of the saints, our ultimate enemy. The rest of the verse answers a what question about the tactics that Satan uses to try to make believers think they are separated from God's love. Trouble, hardship, persecution, famine, nakedness, danger, and sword. The church in communist Vietnam is a good illustration of how our enemy uses the tactic of persecution. All areas where Western missionaries had worked were severely repressed. Believers were told constantly that they were perceived as agents of the CIA. This was especially true in the church in the tribal areas. Government informers constantly monitored the large city churches. And this pressure has continued on in some form to the present. Many wonderful stories have come from Christians imprisoned for their faith in Vietnam. Pastor Daniel, for example, was imprisoned for 3 years, and during that time, he led 200 prisoners to faith in Jesus Christ. A young Christian couple incorporated a strong evangelistic message in their wedding ceremony. In fact, it was so strong, the authorities imprisoned them over the weekend after the wedding day. On Monday, they were told that they could return home, but they actually asked to stay in the prison for 3 more days to counsel with the many prisoners who wanted to know more about Jesus. Imagine being willing to spend your honeymoon in prison for the sake of ministry. In October 2008, Diane and I visited tribal Christians in the neighboring country of Laos, some of whom originally came from Vietnam. They are still experiencing severe persecution because their government considers them to be propagating an American religion. Many are in prison or in hiding. Please pray for them that they will be able to stand strong through their current storms of pressure. And pray that they will know, as Romans 8 tells us, that they can never be separated from the love of God.